Hello developers, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to talk about useEffect, a common issue about useEffect in React for data fetching, which potentially can slow down your application significantly. Let's dive in. useEffect is a very common and useful tool for synchronize your component with an external system. It's the default data fetching mechanism for people who are new to React, or like the default option for most of the people who don't have the framework for data fetching. So useEffect kind of like a default option. So basically you will define a useEffect and the status to maintain the internal state, and then you can fetch the data, set the results, and probably will handle some risk condition. If you haven't yet, I have made a separate video on avoid the risk condition when you use effect, but that's a separate topic. But normally you would set the useEffect and listening for some data changing, and then when they change you fetch data again. That's kind of the basic flow. And the issue we're going to talk about in this video is the timing when you use effect. I have an application up and running here in my local. It's basically a user profile page. As you can see, there is a top section about the username and the description, and there is a section about the user's friends list, and then there is a post list. So it's a typical, a timeline for the user's profile or the homepage for the user. So let's say we have these three sections, and we have code to fetching data for render in each section with the useEffect. That is a very common setup. So the overall component called useDashboard, and inside it there is useBrief and post list. So post list, if we go into that component, it has a post array, and it fetches the data in the useEffect and only run it initially, and then it check if the posts are there, and it runs the list. And for the useBrief, it has two parts. The first part is the user name and description, and there's a separate section called friend list. This is another component. Inside it will fetch the data for the user's friends list, and when it has a list, it will render all the friends. So it's a very typical setup. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that the useEffect runs after the initial render, meaning we don't actually run the fetch until we have already rendered the component or attempt to run the component, and we found there is no data yet, so we render a loading skeleton, and after that initial render, we can actually run the fetch. But that caused the problem of this scenario, like in the useBrief. Initially, this will be run because user is initially is empty, so it's returned. That means this part is not going to run initially, and that will cause the friend list won't be rendered in the first time, and that means this useEffect won't be run until the friend list is rendered. So if we go to the browser and do a refresh, and you can see the loading sequence here. So brief is loading, post is loading, and now the friends is loading. So I have put some delay in my local setup, so the data fetching, the API return with some delays. So you can see, I will refresh again, so you can see that more clearly. So brief and post send out simultaneously, and friends is loading right after that. And friends won't be show, the loading friends won't be shown until we have, say, the user section already. So if I do that fresh again, so you see the brief shows here, and then the loading shows. So in the DevTools, we can see that if I do refresh, some data fetching happens here, in dev mode, all the data fetching happens twice. So I will go back to the application and then let me build the application in a production mode so we can see that more clearly. Run a build. So it will create the bundle for us. And if I go to the dist and start the server at this port, 4000, and let's do that 4000. So now we can see that again here. Actually, let me make a performance record here. Record, refresh, and when I see all the results, I will stop recording, and we can see it more clearly here. So we are sending out the users/u1 for the user information, and we immediately send the post request as well. And then as the request going, and then at some point the user is resolved, and then we start the friends request, and the post is not returned yet. So at some point these posts finally return, and we re-render, so we can see the post being rendered, and then after a while the friends finally being resolved, so we can see the final result of the page. So it's called Request Waterfall. So you can see that it's a waterfall chart. And you can imagine that as more components you add, then potentially can have multiple stages, like this component load this component, and this component use effect to data fetching for another one, and then another one, then another one. It will be a very long waterfall chart, eventually end up with your timeline. That will slow down your application significantly. So ideally, we should have the data ready when we render. But now we render, and we found we cannot render because we don't have data. So it stopped. And then the next round, the useEffect kicks in, and the asynchronized data fetching is happened under the hood. And then at some point it is resolved, and then we can continue to render the next one. And immediately we will find the data is not ready in a sub-component, so we return, and then another useEffect kicks in. So it will be a very long delay until the user can see the initial page. That's definitely something you want to avoid for data fetching, because it can slow down your page. So you could run into a even worse scenario if you don't understand the timing of the useEffect runs. So for example, we have a post list here. In a component structure, it's in under the use brief. So let's say they are just doing some refactoring without reading the code carefully. So let's say this person moved the post list into the brief, and put that under the user list, or maybe we can put it here and wrap it with empty fragment. Let me do this. Right. So this person did some refactoring. It won't change much the structure, but just moving one component to another place. And now the use brief has all the user, friends, and the post list. So let's say now let's go back to the browser again and do a refresh. So this time you only see the brief is being loaded first, and then the friend, and then the post. That's not the worst case. So let's say someone else doing some even further refactoring. They move the post list to here inside the friendship list. Let's say here. So it's like a typical refactoring, people moving component around from here to there. That could happen. And in this case, if we do the refresh again, so you see the brief has been loaded, and user shows up, and the friend list, and then eventually, finally, it's fetching all the posts. If we build the component again, let's say, and if I go to the list and HP not run the 4000, and then if I go to here, do a refresh, brief being loaded, friends being loaded, and after that the post being loaded, and I can do another recording. So this time you can see the user API is being called, and then the friends API being called, and then finally the post being called. So you can see that all the request is not being sent in parallel anymore. So the total page load time will be added up. It will be much longer. It's like 10 seconds to see all the results, which could be resolved if we carefully arrange the sequence of the requests. And in this oversimplified scenario, we can probably avoid that by reading the code carefully, avoid that big refactoring to move component around. But in the real-world product, it will be much harder to do that, because for example, if we have a Jira application, it has so many components in it. Each small component might have its own team to maintain, so it's very hard to read their code to understand, okay, there is a use effect there. You shouldn't move it to a separate place. So in such cases, it's very hard to track like which component has a use effect in it. So when you move it, you should think, should I move this into that hierarchy or not? It's kind of impossible to understand the whole code base. So if you move something, it might be broken the performance significantly without being noticed. So that's definitely something we want to avoid. So one way to mitigate the pain is to shift all the data fetching upfront, and when the React kicks in, or when it actually render, we have already got the necessary data for all the component to render. That means in a top level component, or as early as possible, we can send out the request and then pass it the props down to the render only component. So they are only responsible for render, not actually doing the side effects. So if we look at the data fetching here, we have users and the user. After user resolved, it will have ID, and once we have the user ID, we can actually make the request for the friend list. And if we look at the mock data here, the users are defined as a user ID, name, and the friend list. Friends list is only has the user ID. It doesn't have any details of the friend. We can make some adjustment here to make the friends as the full list of the user. That way, we can send only one request to get all the user information and the friends list. The post definitely can be made in a separate request. So that means we can send out these two requests at once, and when we get a response, we pass it down to the component to let them to render. So in the use dashboard here, we are passing the U1 and doing the data fetching here, and inside we're doing the use the friend list. So we will make the change here. So in the API, we can define another endpoint called V2, and in here, we can get the user first, and then find all the friends of the user, and then return the friends all together with all the details of the user. So let's go to the dashboard here. So we send out to v2/id. So this one will get all the response, get all the friends list as well. And in here, instead of doing the ID, we pass in the friend. Equal to friend, and this friend will be it should be a friends because we have all the friends list. So we pass in the friends here, And in here, instead of doing this, we do friends, and it will be a user list. And then let's say we have the user already. We can get rid of this one first for now. And we don't use the effect anymore. And in the use brief, it's yes, definitely we need to say user.friends because user has its friends. And it's a string. Okay, the type is not updated, so we need to update this as a user list. And in here it will be correct. Let's do it one more time in a browser. So you can see the user brief and the friend list shows up together. So use brief, post, and then immediately you can see the friends and the brief. And if we inspect the network, let's go to the inline one. So if we do a refresh, and you see the user is sending out here, and you can see the friends is returned as well. So that is not bad, but we still have another data fetching for the post. We can reduce the number of user effects in the system and put them up front, and to reduce the overall data fetching cost. So let's go to our dashboard here. We probably can make the request from this level, and we can define a function called fetch data. It fetch all the data, like for all the posts and the friends and the user brief. And then in here we pass down, once we get the data, we pass down these as props to this component, so they only render. If we go to the post list here, we can copy this over, and in here, let's do it something like this. And then in the use brief, we will do the similar thing. In here, we will put it like so. And the ID obviously will be the U1 for now. Let's define its state code const ID to be U1, and yeah, it will send out. And in here, we will pass down the user instead of the ID. So user equals to user, and for the user brief, we do a user, and the user will be the user. Yeah, obviously it could be undefined, so we need to update this to be undefined probably, and get rid of this thing because we don't have the loading anymore, I guess. And in here we pass in the user, and the post will be same, posts equals to posts. And in here we are accepting a post list. It will be post list one, and then we will not need these things, and we don't need the use effect here. And what is this one? Undefined. Oh, sorry, I probably will make it like so. And the post could be, yeah, by default it could be empty, and then the post list will be render the post. So now we have these two effects, and we will merge them together. We do a Promise.all, which will be, this one will be fetch, and this one will be fetch another one, and the post first. Sorry, I'm gonna switch the order here. So we get the user first, and then we get the post, and then finally once we get them, we will set users to user, sorry, it will be user, and we will set posts to be the posts. What else? And also we will catch and throw the arrow, and then we don't need this one, and we need ID, and we don't need this one anymore. So I will move this part out and I'll move this part out, and then will be something like this, and so it go to results, the user and posts. Now just do the setting like so. All right. So now we only have one data fetching call initially, and once we have this data, we set the user and the post, and then we have this data. So hopefully it can. So ideally, it should have all the results coming up all together. The title shows up. I shouldn't have it. So I will say post or undefined. Undefined. So initially it will be undefined. So we can avoid that list. We do refresh, loading, and immediately it shows up all together. So this way we have only one useEffect and one data fetching at the root level of the application. And for all the components, we don't have any loading status. We could have some the skeleton to indicate that something is happening, but we don't necessarily to have the data fetching inside the component. We don't fetch data there. As you can see, it's a feasible solution, but it's definitely not the best of solution, because it's sometimes very hard to recognize all the data fetching queries and put that into the root level. Sometimes it's not feasible, but that's something you should consider before you actually put the useEffect without thinking much. And in the next video, we're going to see how Relay and GraphQL all together can simplify the data fetching in an application like this. That solution resolves the problem from the different angle, and I think that's a better way to organize your data fetching, especially for large applications like Jira or Confluence or some larger enterprise product. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below what other data fetching problems you want to discuss or want to see more, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.